who I haven't met, I'm Vic Machin, and I'm the Schools and Colleges Mental Health and Emotional Wellbeing Advisor, and I am also the project manager for the WOWSI project. I'm just going to introduce you to my colleague Laura.
Yep, so I'm Laura, so I coordinate the project for Vic, but I also work for Thoughtful, which most of you have probably heard of.
Perfect. Thanks, Laura. So I'm just going to come to my slides now, but the purpose of today is just to kind of give you a taste of what we're going to be learning about on the 2-day training, and also to help you to start to just think about which families you might want to be working with. We didn't do this for phase 1. And when we started phase 1, they did their training last October. And because they hadn't started to think about their families until the training, it took some of them until January to get started. And by that time, they were kind of like, oh, the training was 3 months ago. Can't really remember how to get started. Whereas for phase 2, we did one of these, and actually everybody had a family either ready or at least a family in mind when we did the training, and everybody started much more quickly for phase 2. So that's why we are doing this. And as I said, I'm recording for those people who can't be here today. I will say though, phase 3 is a much smaller phase than phase 1 and 2. So phase 1 and 2, we had 40 schools in each of those phases. Phase 3, we've got around 15, 16 at the moment, I think, schools signed up. And really excitingly, for the first time ever, we have got 3 secondary schools who are joining us. So the intervention is valid from age 5 to 12. We've only delivered in primary schools so far, but we do have 3 pilot secondary schools joining us as well, which is going to be really exciting. So hopefully today we'll answer any questions you've got about the project, but obviously, like I said, at the end, there will be time for questions, or if you think you might forget your question, pop it in the chat as we go through. Thanks, everybody. I think I've covered that. So we're going to be looking at just an overview of the project to remind you, talking about the school agreements, which I think you have started to receive from Laura, thinking about your first family, and then I'm going to be talking about our in-house evaluation, and then we'll leave some time for questions. Our colleague Tanya is not with us today, but Tanya is the project commissioner. I quite often say this is all Tanya's fault. This all started when one of our colleagues went to a presentation that a CANS team in East Anglia presented about how they were delivering the WOWSI platform in schools. And he came back and said, oh, we should do this. And Tanya said, yes, Vic should do this. And I said, great. And I said, 20 schools. And she said, 80 schools. And now we're going to nearly 100 schools. So it's very exciting, but the project is quite large and it has grown, but we're seeing some amazing outcomes, as you'll see in a moment. I've introduced you to Laura. And then another important person to know about is our assistant principal educational psychologist, Fran Parker. And she is leading our in-house evaluation of the project. And so you might hear from her, you might hear of her, you will almost certainly hear from her colleague, Amelia Steele, who is the assistant educational psychologist who is doing a lot of the legwork with the evaluation. So a quick reminder, what is WOWSI? WOWSI is our project name, which is Working on Worry, Support and Intervention. And the platform that we use is WOWSI, which is Online Supported Intervention. You all work in education, you know how much we love an acronym in education, and this is just another 2 for you to know. So the online platform itself is based on this book that you can see on the right-hand side that some of you might be familiar with, which is Helping Your Child with Fears and Worries by Kathy Creswell and Lucy Willett. During COVID, just before COVID, lots of mental health services were using the book, and Lucy and Kathy wrote a manual to go alongside it where clinicians could deliver the programme using the book to parents. When COVID came along, they realised that this wasn't going to be happening because we couldn't meet parents face to face. We certainly couldn't run group sessions with parents. And so Kathy Creswell at this point was at Reading University. She's since moved to Oxford. And she developed this amazing online platform, WOWSI, which basically distills the book into interactive sessions on a website, which is fantastic. So that is the platform we are using. It might take some getting used to, WOWSI, Aussie, but you'll get it when you start logging on to WOWSI, you will automatically know which one's which. And so just a reminder here of the modules that the family follows when they are undertaking the intervention. So module 0 is a really simple welcome to the program. It just gets the parents to log into their account, have a look around, understand what they're signing up for. And then once they've done that in week 1 at module 0, you will then meet with them and just check that they feel everything's okay, they want to continue with the intervention, and you will quite simply, and this will all be covered on the training day, you will press unlock on module 1, and the parent will then go home and have a week to access module 1. What's really lovely about each of the modules is that parents can access it in a way that suits them. So some of them download the information and they read it. Some of them watch videos. Some of them listen to it as an audio file. So there's lots of ways they can access it. So it really is a very accessible intervention for parents. And then similarly, when they've completed module 1, you will have that 20-minute check-in with them to kind of check their understanding, check it's going okay. And after module 1, you'll chat about their goals. So they are going to be encouraged to make 1 to 3 SMART goals for module 1. And then you can see they will then carry on through the modules. And it's really, they're very simple, really. And it's about skilling up parents more than it is around actually applying an intervention. So the parent does do the work, which is the intervention with the child, but at the same time, they're learning so much about anxiety. They're learning about what kind of we know about how children's anxiety is maintained, how it continues, and how we can give them skills to overcome, because anxiety is a normal part of life and we want parents to understand that. At the end of module 6, you then have about a month's break. And then you'll meet them again for one last session, but all they do at that session is a quick chat, how things are going, and they fill in the ROMs. Now, ROMs is another one of those acronyms that we're really used to in the clinical settings, but ROMs means routine outcome measures. So it's looking at the levels of anxiety the child is feeling. It's looking at the impact of anxiety, the impact the anxiety is having on the child's life, and it's looking at how they feel they're progressing towards their goals. So they're really lovely, kind of almost self-contained units, but you do have to have completed the one before that you can then say unlock on the next one for the parent. One very odd thing that you might come across that you might take some getting used to when you do log on to the WOWSI platform is that this intervention was developed for use within mental health support teams and CAMS services. So some of the language on there is quite clinical. So whereas the language on Aussie says therapist, that is you guys, that's our school-based facilitators. And then where it says supervisor, they are our team of local experts or skills group leads. So when we approached Kathy Creswell and kind of presented our idea to her, we'd love to be able to train up some primary schools, some 80, coming up to 100 primary schools to deliver this intervention. How can we go about that? One of the stipulations that Kathy had was, well, our clinicians actually access clinical supervision, and we need to make sure that, you know, this is being delivered safely. And we know that schools don't generally have access to supervision in that way. So part of our agreement with Kathy's team is that we will ensure that everybody that is undertaking the work through the WOWSI project will have access to a supervision type session on a regular basis. So we're really lucky to be really well supported in this project. So we have members of our thoughtful team, members of our dedicated schools team in early help, and members of our educational psychology team who are all supporting this project, and they are all working as local experts. So once you're undertaking Aussie, you will be assigned to a skills group, and you will have some time with your skills group, so 4 to 5 other people plus your skills group lead, to talk about how it's going, answer any questions you've got, perhaps have some troubleshooting together, and everybody has found those sessions really, really helpful. One other thing to note on the Aussie platform, because it is written for clinical services, they call their children clients, which is slightly better than the kind of more medicalized version, which we used to call them patients. So just remember, where it says client, it means child. I still double take sometimes when I go into the client list and think, wow, but it does just mean our children. But as I said, you will get used to that kind of language as you go through. Other as I mentioned, we've had some remarkable outcomes so far, and massive hats off to all of our schools who are doing this work. One of the outcome measures that the platform looks at is the revised Child Anxiety and Depression Scale. And this looks at 6 different measures. It looks at separation anxiety, social phobia, generalized anxiety, panic disorder, obsessive compulsive disorder symptoms, behaviors, and then low mood. And the parent fills out at the beginning of the intervention, they fill out, it's quite lengthy, it's a 47-item questionnaire, but it is just tick boxes. And they do it online, so you don't have to sit and do that with them. And it gives them a score of where their child is at the beginning of the intervention and where they are. And then they do it again at the end. And it gives them a score of where they are at the end. In your first check-in session with them after module 0, you will look at these outcome measures and decide with the parent which one of those 6 subscales they want to concentrate on. I will say, for the majority of the children that have gone through the WOWSI programme already, most people have concentrated on either separation anxiety or generalised anxiety. They are the typical children that we're seeing coming through the WOWSI programme. But as you can see, we've had some really brilliant outcomes. So our team, so our school facilitators are in the bright blue, and the clinical teams who undertook the control trial. So remember, these are clinicians in CAMS services and mental health support teams. They are in the turquoise, lighter colour. So you can see that we are almost on a par with those CAMS services. We're doing really, really well. We are seeing about a 20% reduction in children's symptoms of anxiety. However, symptoms of anxiety can be managed. They can lower, but not have so much impact. So actually, Kathy Creswell's team at Oxford University, this is not their preferred outcome measure, and it's not ours either. Preferred outcome measure that we like to look at is the Child Anxiety Impact Scale. Now, as it says, it looks at the impact the anxiety is having on the child's life. So they may well still be having symptoms of anxiety, but they're managing them. It's the impact that we really are interested in. And as you can see here, our children come in the bright blue at a higher level of impact the anxiety is having on their lives than the children in the control trial did. We put this down to the fact that the children in the control trial were in clinical services. So those clinical services had lots of other interventions they could offer. So they only really offered this intervention to their very lowest level of anxiety children. But for our schools, there isn't that plethora of options. So our schools are offering it to children of all kinds of levels of anxiety. And what you can see, though, is that we are making progress, which is just about on a par with the clinicians' outcomes. So we're seeing about a 30% reduction in that impact the anxiety is having on the children's lives. This might sound quite intimidating when I say this, but at the end of every 20-minute check-in, the parent is asked to score that 20-minute check-in, how it made them feel, how they felt the relationship was between you and them, how much they felt that the session was focused on what they wanted to talk about, and your overall approach, and then also just the general sense of the session. And again, we're so proud of the schools we're working with. You can see here, our parents are rating the school-based facilitators higher than parents rated those CAMS and mental health support team clinicians. And we put that down to the fact that you see these parents every day, you know their children, so you have far better relationships with them than anybody in a CAMS clinic is ever going to have, who meets the parent at the beginning of the intervention, says goodbye at the end. They don't have that therapeutic bond in the same way. So yeah, parents have been absolutely so pleased with the sessions they've been receiving. And then this is our favourite one, because we are really making really amazing inroads with goal-based outcomes. So at the beginning of the intervention, every child is asked to identify 1 to 3 goals that they want to work towards, and the parent types them into the platform. And then they are asked every session, where would you rate yourself in terms of meeting that goal? And as you can see in the dark blue, our children come in at a lower level, so they feel further from their end goal than the children in the clinical trial did, but they're ending closer to that ultimate goal. So the journey our children are going on in terms of overcoming their anxiety and reaching their goals is actually outperforming those clinical trials. So again, I really put that down to the quality of the relationships that you have with your children. Those CAMHS clinicians don't know that child. They don't know the family. But our school-based facilitators know those children, they know their families, so they can help them to really shape those goals to be meaningful to them. And also they can support the child to meet those goals in school. So it might be that somebody has a goal of putting their hand up in a lesson and asking questions in lessons. And so schools could support that in a way that a CAMHS clinician never could. So we are seeing these amazing outcomes. And I was asked by Kathy Creswell to present at a symposium over the summer to show these brilliant outcomes that we are having from our schools. So yeah, I would just say well done to all of our phase 1 and 2 schools, and don't be worried about living up to that, because we know that you will have exactly the same kind of outcomes as well. And that's just a summary of those outcomes. So when you get the slides, you can have a look. But essentially, yeah, we are seeing some amazing work going on. And as I said, those goal-based outcomes are just incredible. 84% achievement improvement in a child reaching the goals that they've set for themselves, and a set 97% average score for the session rating scales for parents. So yeah, really good. And then just to show you on a weekly basis, as I said, you will choose one of those 6 subscales and track it on a weekly basis. So on a weekly basis, the parent just fills in 4 or 5 questions. And you can see this child, they were tracking separation anxiety, and you can see how beautifully the levels of anxiety have come down over the course of the intervention. This family hadn't done the follow-up session yet, but the data tells us that at follow-up session, we usually continue to see a fall in that anxiety level. And really worth noting is that in CBT, we generally see the full extent of the outcomes about 6 months on from finishing. So although we don't have a 6-month follow-up, we suspect that if we did, we would see an even greater improvement. And this is just, again, this same child, this is her individual outcome. So you can see in the blue is before treatment and the orange is after treatment. So a real tangible reduction in her anxiety levels and her combined anxiety and low mood levels. And just to give you a taste of the goals. So this particularly young person wanted to worry less about leaving mummy. I wouldn't necessarily call that smart goal. We've not got a time or a very specific way of measuring that, but at least we can see at the beginning, the child said, no way, 0. I don't feel anywhere near meeting that goal, but she made really good progress towards meeting that goal by the end of the 6 sessions. And then her next one was worry less about school, which she felt she had met by module 4. And then I won't go into the next one. I'll let you to have a look at these in your own time, because as I said, I'm conscious that you'll want to go home. But we've got another example there of a child's separation anxiety and how that also came down over the course of the intervention. What I would like to say is you can see it peaks there in module 3. Actually, the anxiety goes up. This is really normal in a CBT context. And this is because we are asking the child to have a go at things that they normally might avoid, or have things in place where they just do something else instead. So it's perfectly okay, and it's really worth understanding that, because when you have a chat with the parents, they might kind of think, oh, it's not working because it's gone up. It's totally normal for it to go up around module 2, 3, 4, because we are expecting the child to try things. But as we know, when you sit with the anxiety, you experience it, actually you start to think it's not that bad. And if you keep repeating those behaviours, then you will feel the anxiety come down. That's exactly what we've seen in many of our outcomes. And there's another example there of some goals, which I will let you look at in your own time. But for this one, you can see that this child met their goals quite early on. And this was about a child that couldn't be separated from mum at night time. And I think this is the one when mum went to her Christmas party. It is. So at the beginning of the intervention, the child, the goal was that mum was going to go to her Christmas party and leave the child with grandma in the evening. Beginning of the intervention, 0. No way that's going to happen. After week 1, okay, I'm thinking about it. Week 3, mum had gone to the party. And so what a huge difference that had made to that family, that mum was now able to go out, and she reported that she was able to go out again as well before the end of the intervention. So just fantastic. So Laura has sent out your school agreements, and part of that agreement says what we offer as part of the WOWSI programme, and then the other part is what you're kind of signing up to. If you have any questions about anything in the agreement, do come back to us. But we have found that it's been really helpful just to really lay out what the expectations are. So as part of our agreement to schools, we will provide the training to one member of staff per school. In the secondary schools, we are opening up to 2 members of staff, just because we know that secondary schools staffing is very, very different. And also, if we offer it to year 7 and 8, it might be that the pastoral lead for each of those years undertakes it. We will provide access to the online platform WOWSI. And at the moment, the project runs until July 2026. We are very hopeful that we will be able to extend the programme because we're seeing such amazing outcomes. So we have got a really, we're really confident that we can present some of those outcomes to funders and hopefully continue the project beyond July 26. But at the moment, that's how long you will have access to the platform for. And then we will provide continued support in the form of regular skills groups. So those are those supervision type groups. And we will also be offering a community of practice. So the community of practice includes our newsletters that go out regularly. It includes our Padlet, which I will show you shortly. And also it includes the opportunity to join a termly online webinar where you will get a chance to learn what's going on with WOWSI in other schools, but also have some time to talk to other WOWSI facilitators who potentially aren't in your skills group to share how it's been going. As I said, we will maintain the Padlet and ensure that you can all access that. And then we also give you access to the online support, which is actually provided by the license holder, which is a company called cohort. They are amazing. There's an email address that you send a really quick email to. They get back to you really quickly, and they always sort out the technical difficulty. So anything about queries around parents and how to approach parents, or if you're struggling, that comes to us, the WOWSI team. If it is a technical issue with the website, it goes to the cohort help desk. But you will see all of this in the training. And then for some schools, in special circumstances, we have agreed to train a member of the Early Help Dedicated Schools team to act as a facilitator on behalf of the schools. And this is for our extremely small primary schools that kind of have 3 or 4 members of staff and so just don't have the capacity to deliver themselves. We do have some good news about that though, which is that in February, our Early Help Dedicated Schools team are offering the training to their whole team. Not all of them are able to take it up because unfortunately it's in half term, but I think about half of the dedicated schools team will be undertaking the training. So then there will be an opportunity for lots more schools to access WOWSI through their dedicated schools team. Or it could be that you're doing WOWSI, actually you've got a waiting list of families that want to do it, but you just don't have time. Then you could talk to your Early Help Dedicated Schools team person, and they could take on another family for you. So in February, we'll let everybody know which of the dedicated schools team have done the training. But the hope is that in time, this will be part of what the dedicated schools team offer. So then on the other side of this, what schools are signing up to is that they will ensure that the staff member, so the facilitator, is able to access the 2-day training online as uninterrupted as possible. We know that things happen in schools and schools are very busy places, but they are very intense 2 days of training, and it is very, very helpful if the person can be as uninterrupted as possible so that they can access the training. It's also really helpful if their internet connection is strong. In some cases in phase 1 and 2, this meant that the person worked from home on those 2 training days, just because it meant that then they weren't going to be pulled into something that was going on in school because it just wasn't possible. But if you can provide a nice quiet space in school for them to do the training and they've got good access to the internet, then that's fine as well. So it's up to you how you manage that. And then we ask schools to ensure the staff member is able to attend those skills groups, so those supervision type groups. For the first 8 weeks, so during December and January, these run on a fortnightly basis, obviously not in the holidays. And then after that, they're a monthly part of the project. I'm just jiggling the skills groups around at the moment to fit in the new phase. And as soon as I have the go-ahead from our colleagues in Thoughtful, who run most of the skills groups, I'll be able to let you know who your skills group lead is, and they will let you know the dates and times of those sessions. If there was any way that you felt, oh, those times just aren't going to work for me, don't panic, come back to me, and we can probably shift your skills group around and match you up with a different one. It is your responsibility to identify suitable families, and we ask schools to carry out a minimum of 2 interventions per term. So you can do those how you like. You could do 2 at the same time. You could do, yes, Sarah, the skills groups will be online. Yeah, absolutely. You could do one after another. You could do a bit of overlap. It's entirely up to you. But the idea is that you will start your first intervention in January. So over the course of the duration of the project as it is at the moment, we would expect you to do 4 interventions between January and July. Obviously, if there are any issues around completing 2 per term, let us know. We're very flexible. We just need to know if there's a hold up. So we've had schools that have just said either, I had a family that's were going to do it, and then they just couldn't find the time to do it, or it just didn't work out the way we thought. As long as we know what's going on, that's all good. We also ask schools to fill out a little bit of an extra evaluation. So most of those outcome measures are collected via the platform, but we do have some extra questionnaires that we are sending out. And this is, as I've explained already, this is to ensure that we can show value for money on this project and that we can show it as making a difference within education. So the outcome measures on the platform itself are very clinically based outcomes. The outcome measures we are collating are more educationally based. So we have a hypothesis that even though lots of the goals are taking place at home, so lots of them are around separating from parents, lots of them are around trying new activities, or lots of them are in bedtime. But actually our hypothesis is that once the child has these skills, we will see a improvement in the way that their anxiety appears at school. So we are looking at things like the child's starts and ends to the day, their attendance. We ask you to give the class teacher, so you don't do it, the class teacher does it, something called the school anxiety scale, which just looks at some markers of how anxious children might appear in the classroom, and we collate those at the beginning and end of the intervention, just so we can look at those educational outcomes. I don't know if there are any schools here who have signed up for a dedicated schools team facilitator, but for those schools that have, obviously the dedicated schools team facilitator will undertake the intervention on your behalf, but it is still the school's responsibility to identify those families and to have the initial conversation with families about the intervention, and then to gain their signed consent that they're happy for their details to be passed over to the dedicated schools team facilitator. And then they will pass the contact details on to the facilitator, who will then contact the parent. The safeguarding responsibility remains with the school, so the dedicated schools team, they will record any safeguarding, but they will pass them back to your DSL in school. And also they will come to you if there's any difficulties. So if the parent's just not showing up to those 20-minute check-ins, or if they can't contact the parent, they will come back to the school to help to kind of bridge that gap. So I'm going to take a quick drink. When it comes to identifying your first family, we will talk a lot more about this in the training, but as I said, it's really helpful if you can start thinking now about those families. So on a simple level, it's a child who's aged 5 to 12 who has a difficulty around anxiety, and that is their primary difficulty. So for example, if the child also was showing signs of low mood, but the low mood was the main difficulty they were having and it caused some anxiety, then we wouldn't want to do an anxiety intervention with that child. We want to do something around their low mood. But if the primary difficulty is anxiety, and you will learn more about how to identify this during the training, or fears and worries or phobias, which are outside of their developmental expectations, then they are brilliant for WOWSI. And that includes those early signs of EBSA type behaviours. So children that complain of tummy aches in the morning, children that are reluctant to cross that threshold into school, or parents says that they're struggling to get them out the door in the morning. All of those types of behaviours are perfect for this intervention. And there's some examples there: difficulty separating from parent, not just a couple of times, but over a period of time. Those physical signs of anxiety, children that overthink and worry, those that check in with adults and seek lots of reassurance. Are you sure I've done this right? Can you just look at my work again? Do you think this is okay? Those kind of children, they are perfect again for this intervention. The family needs to commit to 1 hour a week doing the online platform, and then that 20-minute check-in with your school-based facilitator. It's not a lot of time, and we hope that it is manageable for most families. But there might be some families that you just think, gosh, this is going to be too much of a commitment for them. But I'm hoping it is quite flexible, and they don't have to do it an hour in one go. They can do half an hour, watch the videos or listen to the audio, and then do another half an hour later in the week. And then the other thing, which is less important right at the beginning, but it's something just to consider, that they do need to work towards a goal. So as you saw in the module breakdown, in module 1, so the second week, they will be setting their goals. So it's worth at the beginning, when you have conversations with the parent, and saying, it's goal-based. So think about, what would you like your child to be able to do that they're not currently doing? Or what would your child like to be able to do, ideally, that they're not currently doing? So rather than, I just don't want them to be anxious anymore, we're looking at, is there a club that they'd like to join, but they just can't at the moment? Is there a sleepover they'd like to go on, or something like that, just so they start to think about those concrete goals. So there are ideal families, and here's some examples of goals that we've had. One of them was to be relaxed in new environments, to go to a club or activity that they had an interest in. One was to be able to voice their worries, and this is part of the program. We talk about worry time, we talk about problem solving. So they were going to voice their worries by keeping a daily diary to talk with mummy and daddy and identify an individual at school that she can talk to. So that's a really good, clear goal. To be able to say hello to other children when she arrives at Brownies each week without the need for prompting, that is a really specific goal that is really measurable. To be able to eat a packet of crisps from our crisp box. This was a child with food anxiety who was very worried about, what if someone's touched that packet of crisps? What if it's been open for a while and it's gone off? So that was their goal. And then another one was to be able to sit on chairs that made him feel a certain way. So this child was having real difficulty finding chairs that didn't make him feel worried. And actually, by the end of the intervention, they had worked towards that really nicely. So they're just some examples of goals. We're often asked, is there a criteria? Do we have to meet certain thresholds to offer this to parents? And the answer is absolutely not. So we use the same 2-item screening tool as is used by Kathy Creswell's team at Oxford University. And it's a really simple 2-item question, which is, do fears, worries, or anxiety upset or distress your child? And the parent chooses one of those. Do your child's fears, worries, or anxiety make things difficult for you as a family as a whole? And then you can see the scoring down the right-hand side of that. If the total score is 3 or more, then that is indicative of anxiety difficulties and they are suitable for the intervention. So it could be that actually the child says, I'm only a little bit bothered by my worries, but actually the parent says, is having a really big effect on our family, which that would then give them a score of 4. So they would be suitable for the intervention. Because remember, this is not child focused at all. This is completely parent led. So actually, in some cases, the child, they do know they're working towards these goals, but they're not really aware that mum's following this pattern of modules quite so clearly, because it just becomes part of their normal interaction, their normal conversations. So that is the only thing that we need to check, if they score 3 or more on that scale. And that scale and lots of other resources can be found on our Padlet, which I'm just going to show you now. What you can see on the right hand side here is our gaining the voice of the parent carer. This is not at all a mandatory thing you need to fill out. The only mandatory one is this one. But if you've got a parent who you can't quite unpick what's going on for the child, but they're still telling you, oh, my child's really anxious, or my child has lots of fears and worries, you might want to do a little bit more around gaining their voice and really understanding what's going on for that family. Or it might be that they're quite borderline, maybe they're just scoring a 3 on this, and so you think, actually, let's unpick this a little bit. This resource can be really helpful if you're not quite sure about a family and you want to discuss it at skills group, whether this child is suitable or not. And so if you can gain this extra information, then you've got lots to discuss when you go to your skills group, and our skills group lead can really help you to understand whether this is an anxiety difficulty or if something else is going on for the child. So I'm just going to stop sharing this bit for the moment and come to show you our Padlet. So I will send you the link to our Padlet after the session. But what I will show you what it looks like. This is something that we didn't have in phase 1, but we have developed since, and people have found it really, really helpful. So the Padlet looks like this. And essentially, it has every single thing you need to get going with the intervention, bar the platform itself. So you can see along the top row is everything you need before starting the intervention. So we've got a script. If you want to use it, you absolutely don't have to, for approaching parents, and that just goes through the background to the program, what training you've undertaken or you will have undertaken. We've then got that 2-item screening tool, which I've just shown you. So you can download it as a PDF, print it out, and you would just give the parent the front page. They would circle it, you'd take it back, score it, and then you would know whether or not the family is suitable for the intervention. We do also have the background information for you to share with parents. Again, you could send this by email or you could print it out for them. Just gives them a really nice overview of the intervention. Also, that can be a really helpful thing to share with your colleagues in school who you might want to ask, do you have any families in mind for this? That's a bit more of a wordy one, so it's up to you which you feel your parents would prefer. We've then got a letter that you might choose to give to parents and carers. Again, you could make your own letter, or you are very welcome to use our pro forma here, which just explains what the intervention is, why the parent's been approached. Now, I say the parent's been approached. So in some schools, it's worked where it's only on a kind of approached format. So the parent is approached by the school facilitator or by the child's class teacher or whoever it is. In other schools, they've said, actually, we've just put a flyer in the book bags and advertised it to all parents. And so it's entirely up to you how you run that. There are ups and downs for both of those. And then there's this introduction to WOWSI for your school colleagues. So helpful to pass out to colleagues in school so they can understand what the intervention is. They can even have a think about, do they think the family's right for the intervention? And they can understand why we are offering a parent-led intervention rather than a child-led intervention. And again, a little bit of background there for your school colleagues. I'll come out of that. So that's before the intervention, everything you need. So you don't really need to worry about the rest at the moment. However, if you are interested, there's our previous newsletters. Newsletters come out every half term, roughly. There's a little bit of a top tips for parents to get started on the platform that we wrote, because that was something the schools asked for. I will update the timeline with a phase 3. We've got a copy of the school agreements. We've got those evaluation documents that I'm going to talk about in a moment. So they can be found there, but you don't really need to worry about that because, as I said, Amelia is very good at contacting you and she will send you the documents you need. And then there's a particular section for schools with a dedicated schools team facilitator. And then there's a section here which is from our parent carer forum. We've commissioned the West Sussex Parent Carer Forum to work alongside us with WOWSI, and that is for the simple reason that, as I mentioned earlier, previous to COVID, this intervention was mostly run as a group intervention. which does work really nicely if you have got the time and the energy and the space to facilitate parent groups. And the magic in those sessions is that parents can talk to each other and get that kind of peer support. We don't have that when they're doing it online. So we approached the Parent Carer Forum to ask them if they could kind of facilitate that bit so that parents aren't missing out. So they offer regular, I'll just show you the dates we've got in for the following, for this coming this term and next term. They offer these regular drop-in chats that parents can join, and they are just so that parents have some connection with other parents that are either doing WOWSI or have done WOWSI, or even if they're just thinking about WOWSI. Even if the parent's not quite sure, they could still join one of these sessions and talk to other parents that are doing it. There's a real focus for these sessions on parent wellbeing, because we know how difficult it is to support your children if they've got additional needs or if they're a particularly anxious child. So there is a focus on parent wellbeing, but it is just that opportunity for them to come together with other parents. And then we also on here have a link to our WOWSI discussion board, which is a separate Padlet. And but so it links straight through there, and it's a really simple Padlet that basically allows you to post a question. And then I get emailed as soon as the question comes up. So it means that I can just immediately answer it. And then other people can see the question's been asked. You can ask it anonymously, but you never know the same question you're answering. Probably likely that someone else was thinking the same thing. So it can be really helpful to share on there as well. So before I let you go, just going to mention our evaluation, our in-house evaluation. Showing you those already, so that's good. So I've already explained this a little bit, but as I said, the platform itself measures child anxiety in a very clinical sense. But we want to show that this is a really good way of running the intervention, that it works when it's delivered by school colleagues, and that school staff benefit from undertaking the training, from working with parents in this way, and that we're seeing outcomes that are relevant to school life. So those early signs of EBSA, the child's presentation at school, and their own perception of their difficulties. So what happens is Amelia, who is our assistant psychologist, when we see that you've logged a new family onto WOWSI, she will send you a pre-evaluation pack. You print that out, you give one part of it to the parent to fill out, give the other part to the class teacher to fill out, collect them back in, send them back, scan them, or take a photo and send it back to us. And then we collate those. And then when Amelia then sees that you've completed module 6, she will then send out the post-evaluation pack as well. So you don't need to remember to do this. Amelia will be in contact with you as if by magic, ably assisted by Laura, who keeps an eye on our cases. All you need to remember is that they're anonymous. So just to write the child's numeric ID, which you can find when you log them onto WOWSI at the top of the evaluation. It sounds complicated. It will all make sense when you're doing it. Oh no, sorry. This happened to me the other day. I'm going to stop sharing because my voice is on that, which is just horrendous for me, to be honest. When I record sessions of things, for some reason, I keep forgetting to take off my recorded version. Let me just go in and do this another way, so you don't hear my voice twice, which nobody needs, to be honest. Right, let's try again. Good, that looks like that's cleared that up. I'll come back in. Apologies, everybody. Let's try again. Fingers crossed this has worked. You're lucky. I figured out how to work this the other day. When I did it on Monday in a session, I didn't know how to take it off. Right. There we go. So what next? So the training obviously is on the 28th of November and the 1st of December. The week prior to that, you will receive during that week, you will receive your login to your WOWSI account. I would really recommend that you try to log in for the training so that you know that it's working fine. And that way you've got a week to let us know that, oh, I don't think I can log in. and then Laura and I can help you out. You will also be set up with a dummy parent account, and that's just so that you can see what the parent sees, just to give you an idea. So Laura will be sending those out to you before the training. Then you have the training, and then your skills groups will start in December, and that is just to help you to identify those first families. So it's likely you'll just have one skills group in December. So the training's on the 1st. You will have one skills group just before the end of term. As I said, I'm hoping to match up your skills group leads very shortly, and so they will be in touch to let you know when those are happening. And yes, they are online. And then you go away for Christmas. Hopefully you've got a family in mind. They know they're going to start. And then when you come back in January, you can start that module 0 with the family. We do have a little extra community of practice on the 11th of December. They're absolutely not vital. You don't have to come. But for these, we invite everybody who's involved with the project. So all of our schools, all of our skills group facilitators, REPs. This time we are inviting potential funders. We invite the Parent Carer Forum to come along. So, and it's just an opportunity to share how the project is going. And also this time we've got a couple of schools presenting, and we're hoping, fingers crossed, that she says yes, to have a parent presenting as well to talk about her experience of the project. So that is what to expect. You will receive the link for the training quite shortly, because we've got all those set up. So hopefully in the next week or so, you will receive the link for the training. But the key messages from today are, first of all, don't worry. We know from past experience that it's quite anxiety provoking for yourself, actually, to be taking on something totally new, which you feel a little bit in the dark about at the moment. But what the feedback we've had from schools is that really it feels like a lot, but really all you're doing at first is that module 0 with one parent. That's all you need to think about. And it's a bit like those of us who are teachers. It's a bit like when you first started teaching, and all you think is, I've just got to get through this first lesson. I've just got to teach them this little bit, and then I can breathe and do the next bit. And it's exactly like that. So module 0, that's all you need to think about. Start sharing information with families if you'd like to, so from the Padlet and with your colleagues. And then start having those conversations and thinking about who would be a good first family. Who do we think would be really good for this? Don't go for a family whose child's got really high levels of anxiety for your first one. I would say go for those middle ground. You don't want to go to someone that's got really negligible levels of anxiety, because you won't see that lovely fall. But you know, someone in that middle ground would be really good. Laura will send you the invitation to your sessions. She will send you your invitation to log into your WOWSI account. And if you are a school that has been given a dedicated schools team facilitator, I will be in touch with you when they are doing their training. So end of November, beginning of December, to let you know that they're ready to have that first conversation with you. We do offer funding if you need it to cover supply for those 2 days of training. If you do need to access that funding for supply cover on those 2 days of training, you just email wowsi@westsussex.gov.uk. We will sort that out for you. So I'm going to stop sharing, and I'm going to stop the recording, and I will open up to questions.